you haven't heard it yet. Let's see if I can find it.
This is called Computer.
This is called Computer, yes. There we go.
All right, good afternoon. So, yeah, hey. So I'm assuming everybody is here because they know that this is Mark Hall's last lecture. I'm also hoping that you're noticing that it's just March. So as usual, Mark has decided to do things a little differently. I've put in a call to HR to let them know that he's trying to get out of the remaining 8 weeks of the semester, and I haven't heard back from them, but I'll let you know how that goes. I'm assuming you're here because you know Mark. I'm assuming you're here because you're either a former student of Mark's, or you're a current student of Mark's, or you're a faculty colleague or a staff colleague. I'm also assuming that you know Mark well enough to know that he's not exactly right. His sense of humor is different, let's say. And so, like you, I'm here mostly just out of sheer curiosity. It would really, it is so hard for me to not want to turn this into a roast. But I'm not going to do that because I know he has an action-packed hour for us. So without any delay, Mark Hall.
If you don't, I brought my Diet Vernors. If you don't know what Diet Vernors is, it's Detroit River water that they filter out the particulate matter. It's automatically carbonated. You can wash your clothes in it as well, or dry clean them. I have that up here. First, I need to do a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is that although I am a little bit choked up from the trees that are so producing all that yellow stuff out in the air, and I do get this every year, I may occasionally grab the Mickey Mouse handkerchief, and that will be more from tears of thankfulness and joy. Not joy that I'm leaving, but joy of thankfulness for family who are here from Indiana, North Carolina, friends from all over the place, colleagues who I also consider friends, students, alumni. Thank you for coming in. Let's see what we can do. Okay, today's topic is called A Phrenological Study of a Madman. And if you hadn't gathered, I'm the madman. And it is a presentation on the nature of art and the artist. And it will borrow from a number of disciplines that my colleagues are familiar with that have their roots in Charles the Great's Trivium and Quadrivium, meaning the 7 liberal arts, and I will even go back as far as Homer and the Sophists for some of my references. It is hoped that today's presentation will also be, or fall into the category of Wagner's Gesamtkunstwerk. Isn't that a wonderful Gesamtkunstwerk? Which means total work of art. Wagner referred to his operas, and any of you seen the Ring Cycle? If you raise your hands, I would say I'm sorry. All 9 hours of it, which was an example of what he meant by a Gesamtkunstwerk, and I will attempt to make today's presentation a little shorter than that. It is the tracing of a pilgrimage of a young boy born on July 25th, 1948, on the northwest side of Indianapolis, Indiana, fortuitously, the same year as the first television station opened in that fair Hoosier city. Yes. It is the story of how I got to this place, the stages I went through, and why, apart from my wife, who is someplace out over there, apart from my wife, my great love and reason for being is art. Unlike Dante's comedy, which took 3 days culminating in Easter, this pilgrimage has the duration of a lifetime, and as of now, let me check, is not over. Our young searcher, Moana, was born into the household of Dorothy Keller Hall and Edward Albert Hall, the youngest of 3. My sister, by the way, who's slightly older than me, is here. the youngest of three, and initially I was raised in a 2-story shingle and siding, 4-square house designed and built by my grandfather, Charles Hall, who was an ex-math teacher and an architect. As seen in this early photograph, by the way, I'm the one on your right, if there's any confusion. I was clearly the subject of psychological experiments by my older sister. And it was recorded that a family friend would spend numerous hours playing pitch and catch with me, but the friend was not using a regulation baseball, softball, football, or basketball, but the ball created solely in the imagination. I could do spectacular leaping catches of this imaginary ball, but I have to admit that after I got older and had to try to catch a real one, I was not nearly so good. I knew, like most boys who watched early 1950s TV with Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, and Hopalong Cassidy, I wanted to be either a fireman or a cowboy.
Lonely
Ah, yes. My youth. By the way, that song written by Bob Nolan was actually arranged by a Maryville student, Drew Hatcher, who is a music major, and not here, but if you see Drew anytime, thank him very much, as I will. Well, I spent really an hour at my grandmother's, seated in front of a 12-inch black and white RCA television set. In fact, by age 6, I knew every show from sign on at 6 a.m. to sign off at 1 a.m. on all 3 channels. You can see me modeling here. Like I wanted to be Vanna White when I was big. Okay. Yes, I was sleep deprived. Countless hours were spent watching Kindergarten College, Howdy Doody, numerous cowboy shows, obviously, Omnibus, Playhouse 90, old movies, The Today Show with Dave Garroway and his chimp, and The Tonight Show with Steve Allen, while playing with building bricks and drawing pictures of what I was seeing on the small screen. When of age, I attended the neighborhood elementary school and junior high, and I know this will be a shock. I was known as a trickster. You see, on one occasion, after making a report in front of my 4th grade class, I proceeded to do somersaults down the aisle to my desk. It was the next year that multiple events occurred within a few months of each other that led to a change in my young life. First, I sang in front of my 5th grade class and in front of the music teacher, Miss McCoy. And she was, believe it or not, a member of the McCoys of the Hatfield and McCoy. She was from Kentucky. Oh, God, loved her. Anyhow, we found out, and I didn't know it, that I was a 3-octave boy soprano. And, you know, as a result of my being that, I was in the school choir, which just happened to meet at the same time as the scheduled English class, which, of course, I sacrificed for the Queen of the Arts, music. The second and third events were contests held each spring. The music memory contest and the art contest. If you could identify at an 80% clip the name of the composition and the composer, you got to miss an entire day of school to hear the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra perform under the direction of Maestro Eisler Solomon. I did not miss that concert in 4 years. The related contest for identifying works of art and artists resulted in a day at the Heron Museum of Art, where I was in wonder looking at pieces like this by George Seurat or Thomas Eakins. They also had Monet, Picasso, Modigliani, and many others, which I would later find out about. I even won a free summer art class at the museum. The 4th impactful event was attending a production of No Time for Sergeants with my next-door neighbor to see her father in the lead. I was thoroughly entranced by the play. You see, I was introduced to the arts at a young age. Normally I put them to sleep by now. Okay. A tragedy hit just before graduation from the junior high as I was preparing to sing the popular hit, Moon River. My voice cracked and began changing. And regretfully, it never truly recovered. High school was not memorable. From ages 14 through 17, I was painfully thin, although growing in height. By the end of my senior year in high school, I got to an astounding 5 feet 10 inches tall and 95 pounds. In a school of just over 5,000 with accompanying lockers, I could have been stuffed in one with room to set up housekeeping. Yep, high school was best, I felt, was one required academic class after another, and best experience when no one knew you were there. College was a small liberal arts Presbyterian college. No, I didn't come to Maryville. Where I attended, I went to follow or pursue what I felt was a very strong pre-med biology major. Yes, I was going to be a doctor. Doesn't that scare you? Biology 1 and 2 were each 5-hour classes, 4 hours of lecture, in which over 100 eager first-year students listened to two of the most energetic, monotone speakers ever heard talk about the intricacies of the cell anatomy and ecosystems. God. The other hour was the lab, where we dissected everything from the earthworm to the cat. Now, I frequently slipped into my 8 a.m. seat after an all night of playing cards or other nefarious activities, and slept through a repeat of what I had experienced in high school. I failed lab each semester, although passed the course because I could pass the lecture. I failed the lab because I would take the cat or other animals we were dissecting and rearrange the parts in patterns. Or, on occasionally, going back to some of my earlier thinking, I took the body parts out and would put them on the lunch trays, going back to the washroom, where they would have to deal with the dishes. The head of the biology department, Dr. J. Daniel Webster, suggested that I look for another major. This I did while trying to attend as few classes as possible in all subjects. I did consider history and economics, but quite frankly was bored by both. Sorry, Dan, but it was the case. The seeds of my future pilgrimage had been planted while in middle school, and 2 events in college sealed my fate. The homecoming theme in 1967, and you'll now learn, was Hanover Sons Victorious, Hanover College, through the spirit of 1967. I should note that Hanover College was a completely dry campus. My dorm decided to push the envelope, and I was in favor of it, and take the slogan literally. We constructed 2 10-foot-tall beer cans and a 15-foot-tall vodka bottle with the supportive slogans, you will love these, send them home sadder, Budweiser, beat the Schlitz out of them, and smear them off the field. Yes. Someone had to draw the labels for the display, and I'd always been able to draw anything I saw, so I volunteered. And by the way, when I asked for beer cans that I could draw from, it was amazing how many on a dry campus immediately appeared in front of me empty within a matter of just a few minutes. Well, because our display violated the college's ban on all alcoholic beverages, our entry was disallowed, but one of the judges commented that whoever drew the labels ought to consider art as a major. The second event occurred in the required intro to theology class. The first writing assignment was to compare the Gospel of St. Matthew with Albert Camus' The Stranger. Now that was a topic I had to ponder. How does one compare a Jewish-inspired telling of the life of Jesus as the Christ with an existentialist anti-hero who acts in the face of nothingness? Well, I thought, I wrote, and for once I finished the paper early. A fellow student in the dorm asked if he could look over my essay to get some ideas, stating he just couldn't get a handle on the topic. And he was Jewish, I understood. So I said, hey, fine, here. I just wanted the paper back before I went to bed. When Dr. Matthews returned the papers, this student and I were asked to see him at the end of class. There I learned that one of us had plagiarized the paper. The nameless other student automatically failed the course. I failed the assignment for being stupid enough to trust him. By the way, I haven't learned anything. I would have trusted him again. That I was livid would be an understatement, and I was bound and determined to the world, and especially the religion department, that I was able to do metaphysical thinking. So I did a double major in art and theology. Now, Hanover College is located in a small southern Indiana community and sits on a bluff overlooking the Ohio River. We used to say it's been run that way ever since. It was not uncommon for me to walk out at night to the promontory, which you see here, looking over the river, and stare up at, as Carl Sagan would have said, the billions and billions of stars. And I would say and ponder the meaning of life. What was it about?
Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's revolving at 10,000 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 100 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour of the galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. Light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy is only one of millions and billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Our universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all directions. It can whiz as fast as it can go, the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. Remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazing and unlikely is your birth, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere in outer space, 'cause I'm afraid that we got cheated here on Earth.
Zeb Phillips and Chase Hatmaker. Guys, thank you very much. It was at this time that I began reading Paul Tillich, the German theologian, who in his book Theology of Culture proposed two ideas connected to art. First, that art is a symbol that opens up new levels of understanding and reality for humans. The second, that Picasso's painting Guernica, created for the Free Spanish Pavilion at the Paris World's Fair of 1937, was the greatest work of Christian art created in the 20th century. Now, I have to admit, both concepts left me puzzled. Following the thought of Suzanne Langer, Tillich was proposing that we communicate through two types of language: signs that are straightforward, mathematical, literal, objective, and without nuance. And the symbol, which, since it cannot fully be comprehended, is like a metaphor that takes the everyday and opens up a revelatory understanding, even though incomplete. As you can tell, we're getting to the heavy stuff. My problem was I could not come up with any communication that at some level was literally true. This wiggle room in language is both the delight and the confusion that we have with language. The other issue is that if Christianity spoke only about brokenness and not joy, take for instance Matisse's Joy of Life, then Christianity was a little too dour for my taste. You see, I was also raised on Mad Magazine, Spike Jones and the City Slickers. By the way, if you don't know, that was a Dada band in the 40s. And the album that my brother had that I wore out, and he didn't know I wore it out, was Spike Jones and the City Slickers do Carmen. You look it up, you'll find out. And, of course, the Ernie Kovacs show on TV. What I quickly came to discover was a primary epistemological question. How do we know? And in turn, what is the function of the arts? After college, I went on to study at Christian Theological Seminary, a Disciples of Christ school, housed in a building designed by Edward Larrabee Barnes. He also designed the KMA. That displayed, that when you first walked in, this was what you saw. Sculpture by Arnaldo Palmadoro, painting in the by Victor Vasarely in the lunch hall, George Ortman paintings and posters were in all the classrooms, and the boardroom had a painting by Ben Nicholson that was amazing. While at seminary, I first worked as a production technician and designer for the public television station in Indianapolis, but eventually got a job at the newly built Indianapolis Museum of Art, just 2 blocks from the seminary. By the way, the man who hired me, my wife was doing work study at and he said, you know, your wife is really good looking, that's why I hired you. It had nothing to do with me, so. But once the foot was in the door. For 4 years, I installed works by some of the world's greatest artists, marveling at the flesh tones of a Caravaggio, the structure of Braque or Picasso, the stark realism of Akins that you saw earlier, the whimsy of Dali, or the brutal vision of a George Tucker. I read more Tillich and Karl Barth. Now, I don't know if any of you have had the misfortune, have read Karl Barth, a neo-Orthodox theologian, but so that you know that I didn't agree with everything I read, when I read Barth, I went outside and much like Milton's Satan yelled out to the heavens, I'd sooner rule in hell. I didn't like Barth. I studied Kant, Camus, Jacques Maritain, read Faulkner and Ralph Waldo Ellison. I looked at the abstract and studied the abstract expressionist, read Alfred North Whitehead, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, Donald Sherburne, who was at Vanderbilt at that point, and Bernard Maitland. In other words, I immersed myself in this question of what is art and how do we know? I worked and studied, in some cases lived with great art. Additionally, I would make it occasionally again to hear the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. I attended plays by Shaw, Ibsen, Williams, Ionesco. I still kept asking the question, why do I personally in our society find such importance in the arts? Why at graduation, as the president of the student body, yes, I was the president of the student body in seminary, it's hard to believe, I was required to read one of the scripture lessons. Why did I insist to read E.E. Cummings rather than something from the canon of Christian scripture? It was through a connection of my wife's that some clarity began to come to these questions. As some of you may know, my wife too went to seminary, and while there met Bernard Maitland, who was a process thinker at the University of Chicago. Maitland was taken with my wife, there's no question about it, and so was I. And he invited us to visit him first in Chicago and then at his cabin on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, north of Holland. And in talking with and discussing and listening to Bernard Maitland, I was struck by his sense that there is an aesthetic sensibility to the universe and to God. That beauty at a cosmological level is a reflection of the divine and what we aspire to create. Beauty as the organizational framework of the universe intrigued me. But there was still the epistemological question. How do we know? The father of process philosophy, Alfred North Whitehead, a thinker who, I don't think I saw Bill Meyer come in, but I know Bill Meyer has read because his students immediately saw the print that I did out in the lobby that has in the Trinity, Whitehead, Mark Twain, and Ernie Kovacs as my Trinity. And they said, Whitehead. I said, yes, Whitehead. That he proposed that we exist in the eternal now, between our past, pulled towards an undetermined future. We make choices. We base them on our hopes, which pull us towards the future, but we are always mindful of our history. We are not finished beings, what are called monads in philosophy, but we are an ever-changing connection of choices. I will be a different person tomorrow than I am today. We are, in essence, process. In this context, we communicate about our experience through symbolic discourse. As I had suspected, the factual, non-nuanced, objective communication proposed by Tillich does not exist. It just reinforced what I had already thought. All human discourse is symbolic. So, how do we understand the arts? Why are they so important if they're a symbol along next to something else?
Beyond the floating bridge, another world awaits. There, the master dances for the concubine. The fly watches the monk buzz around the room. The emperor settles into the straw to sleep. I travel there often, but I cannot honestly say I know the way. The bridge appears at unlikely times, when I'm walking down the street, when I am eating breakfast with a child. Once, in the middle of a funeral, I joined hands with the deceased and walked across. Sometimes the bridge is small and inconspicuous, like a poem, or the flight of a bird. Often I don't realize I'm on it until I get to the other side. Once, I made the mistake of closing my eyes halfway across and letting my lover spin me around. Now I've lost track of which side I'm standing on.
A former colleague, David Shumate, created that prose poem, and in it gives us a clue to at least part of the reason why the arts are so important and what they accomplish. Donald Sherburne, in his book on Whiteheadian aesthetics, suggests that the arts act not just as a symbol, but as a proposition. And in philosophy, a proposition, the definition of a proposition is the shareable objects of attitudes and the primary bearers of truth and falsity. The arts are a type of metaphor, communicating the truth and falsity of our existence. The arts tap into the basic structure, the beauty that underlies the universe, whether it's sound, word, form, or color, giving us a sense of our place in that structure. But the arts do more. They give us a new vantage point on the future and what it can or shouldn't become. My seminary Hebrew scripture professor, Gerald Jansen, a Canadian Anglican priest and poet, often spoke in what I might call musical language. Jerry once spoke of art as like being on a swing. The arts are like those two moments when, if you will remember, we had a swing set in the backyard. And one of my favorite things was to go out and get in the swing and pump with my arms and legs as hard as I could to reach those two moments. You know, I'm talking about those two moments when you're weightless. When you swing forward, you reach the apex of the arc and for a split second are weightless, staring off into the heavens and the future of hope. On the backward apex of the arc, one is equally weightless but staring precariously down at the earth and holding on with white knuckles, lest one let go and fall face first into the dirt. In those, we see the dangers of our past actions. I did let go once, never twice. The arts can make us weightless. A second insight into the nature of art and its importance came from my wife's occasional concern. I'm sure Carl's wife has the same. And maybe a few other people's. Occasional concern when I'm working on a print, a drawing, or a piece of sculpture. There have been times when I've been bent over my drafting table for hours, concentrating a line here, a form there, and she has to remind me, or my back tells me, that it's about 3 or 4 in the morning. Carl usually writes his test questions at that point. I try to go to bed. I mean, at least he told me his best questions come at 3 in the morning. I've realized that on those occasions, I had not lost track of time. I had become immersed in it. For that brief period, both my past and my future had fused together in the present. And like the Buddha, I lived totally in the now. When sitting before a painting by Vasily Kandinsky or Chuck Close, listening to a Mozart aria or the Miles Davis trio, watching a Eugene O'Neill play or a Peter Weir movie, reading a prose poem by David Shumate or reading a Faulkner novel, I can achieve that same sense of union in and through time. I immerse myself so my now is united with my past and the lure of the future. The early 20th century German expressionist art group known as Die Brücke took their name because they saw art as a bridge, or Brücke, between the past and the future. Art is a connector between our lives, our hopes, our fears, our dreams, and our nightmares. Great art in whatever form can accomplish this. Now, I also know that art can lie. Our understanding and recall of the past can be misguided, as we have seen in recent interpretations of the meaning and use of the battle flag of the Army of Virginia. Or if you've studied German history, the images that the Nazis created trying to reinterpret the mythology of Germany. Also, our desires for the future can be equally wrong. The architect, modern architect Le Corbusier, designed buildings as machines for living that excluded the emotional and idiosyncratic which is present in us all, hoping to create a more rational human being through his sparse, geometric-shaped, and what I would call torturous environments. Not my favorite architect. However, the arts can also tell the truth in ways that clarify the question of what it means to be human. The arts hold up a mirror for us to see both the smiles and the sorrows of life. For example, this painting, which I had the pleasure not only of installing at the Indianapolis Museum of Art in the Clues Pavilion, but many years ago, but was always drawn back to it. It's called Sleeping Cupid. It's by Caravaggio. And it's an exquisite painting created around 1595-96, supposedly showing the winged arbiter of love, exhausted after his activities of the day. But I was haunted by this painting and kept going back to it and looking at it, and found out that, in fact, it's an intimate portrait of a dead child that Caravaggio found on the streets in Italy. Now, not all works of art are revelatory to everyone. We have different pasts that color our experiences in the now, and we have different dreams, hopes for our futures that pull forward and cause us to make choices that vary from person to person. The arts act as a type of cosmological revelation. So how then are we to approach those who create them and what they create? Should we look upon Dr. Carl Lambert, Dr. Heather McMahon, or Dr. Bill Swan as demigods? Should humanity let artists get the best seats in the Clayton Center for a sizable discount, meaning free? Should we erect statues to them or name buildings after them? In the quad, did you think? As some of you may already know, I've always wanted to have a building named after me called Hall Hall. Or Hall Squared if you wanted to think it was a math building. But I feel that probably I'm going to need about $2 to $5 million to make that happen. So the answer to the question of artist as demigod is obviously no. But to take advantage of the arts and what they may tell us, we should surround us with. You know, we need to surround ourselves with the arts on our campus, in our homes, and in our communities. We need to live with the arts for them to live with us. Now, we already have a good start with paintings, prints, and sculpture in the building of the Clayton Center. There are 2 wonderful Hiroshige prints in the President's Suite given by the grandparents of a former art major, And the Student Center has photographs by Tillman Crane, but we need more. We need sculpture on campus, more paintings, photographs, prints throughout campus. Much like Syracuse University has done. I don't know if any of you have been to Syracuse lately, but Syracuse University decided that they lived in that city and they needed to have an impact on it. So they have consciously been going out and doing everything they can to put art, help with architecture, help with anything they can to help in the community. We need to fill our surrounding community with art. Our environment does not end at the entrances to the college. We bring the community on campus with play productions, the orchestra and the concert band at Maryville College, but we need to expand. The college and community need to be surrounded by these mirrors that hold up to us questions of our identity. But as we come to the end of this Gesamtkunstwerk, aren't you glad it didn't go 9 hours? This journey into the nature of art and the artist, and knowing that one of my, if you hadn't given, one of my favorite artistic movements is Dada, and I was and am a follower of Monty Python's Flying Circus. I want to end this presentation with all of us, now notice I said all of us, joining together to participate in the Queen of the Arts music in a sing-along. Ah, yes. That summarizes at least part of my worldview. An approach to life that may give us the proper perspective, at least to the artist and to me. When we finish, please join me for a reception in the gallery. I hope. It's there. Okay.
But
You
I
Janet.
don't want to be crucified.
Oh, cheer up, Brian. You know what they say.
Screen.
Some things in life are bad, they can really make you sad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's whistle, don't ramble, give a whistle. And this'll help things turn out for the best. Hey, always look on the bright side of life. See? Always look on the light side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. If you're feeling in the dumps, don't be silly chumps, just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. Hey, always look on the bright side of life. Very good. Always look on the light side of life. For life is quite absurd, and death's the final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. So, always look on the bright side of death. And just before you draw your terminal breath, life's a piece of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke, it's true. You'll see it's all a show. Keep on laughing as you go. Just remember the last laugh is on you. Hey, always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Be changed. Always look on the bright side of life. 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 Always look on the bright side of life.
Now if I can just talk, HR into letting me,